I'm Ian Whitaker, and this is perhaps the ultimate set of behind the scenes and production photos from Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. The accompanying commentary will focus on providing insight into the film's production and observations about the film itself. This is either a deleted or test version of the AE-35 scene using a completely different prop. It's a small parabolic dish with a handle. The A35 unit was supposed to be a gyroscopic device that maintained the alignment between Discovery 1's communication antenna and Earth. The prop used for it was an off-the-shelf English-made aviation component, a Sperry gyro magnetic compass, with minor cosmetic alterations. In 2020, Douglas Trumbull shared this photograph of this unmodified Sperry gyro compass. It appears to have been taken after production of the film. There's a 1980s computer keyboard above it. Douglas Trumbull built a wireframe of the A35 to photograph and use as mock computer graphics for the film. Consider how clever this was for the time. This is before computers actually did this. The gyro appears to be part of a reoccurring theme of orientation and disorientation. Stanley's daughter Vivian with a chimp from the set of 2001. This is one of the two infant chimpanzees that were used in the film. All the other apes were of course actors. Here you can see one of the ape men concepts that never made it to the final movie. It seems like when Kubrick didn't know the answer to the question he had, he always liked to try various solutions until something stood out as the correct answer. The centrifuge was manufactured for the production by British engineering company Vickers Armstrong, aircraft manufacturers and shipbuilders, both for the private industry and the arms industry. Early concept for the International Space Station. The ceiling is the same as in the film. To the left we can see a cinema and a cafe labelled in the centre. Perhaps the next sign says school. Then there is a sign for central store. To the right of that, close by, it looks like it says pharmacy, but it's difficult to be certain about that one. The deliberately minimalistic Stark area near the Hilton reception contrasts with this area with its vegetation, its water feature, with a green and blue decorative theme that emphasises them and gives them a more conventional, familiar, relaxing atmosphere. It might be a development of this water feature that's been painted by the children in the deleted scene, which also has a blue and green theme with the same white ceiling divided into squares. This might be a deleted scene from the International Space Station. It appears to use a set that was developed from that previous sketch. The ceiling and the pink hostess uniform match the International Space Station. For these reasons, I would assume that this is not the moon base, which seems to be strictly for research and not public use. But it's not so simple on reflection. It appears that Dr. Floyd is passing through the area, accompanied by the officials who attend his moonbase meeting. That includes the photographer, camera in hand there, wearing the same clothes, and two women wearing the same exact clothes as the meeting. And they're all wearing photo ID cards on their left chest, like in the meeting. If so, why does Dr. Floyd appear to be travelling alone on his flight to the moon? Is it a public area or a school education area? Is it the International Space Station departure gate area? So either they're all on their way to the moon, or they're on their way back on the same day as the meeting and the visit to the monolith because of their clothes. Or is this the moon base and they're heading to the meeting room? Or was this some sort of test on the set without every detail needing to be perfect, and Kubrick just grabbed some actors who were handy? Although the arrangement of the children and the teacher around the pool doesn't suggest that. Which do you think it is? Production designer Tony Masters holding an Aeroflot Titov Russian spacecraft model. You can see it in the film behind the Hilton reception area. It's named after the Russian cosmonaut who, on the 6th of August 1961, became the second human to orbit the Earth. Tony Masters, here again, was born in 1919 in Kent, England. His 45-year career included films like Lawrence of Arabia, Dune, Papillon, The Clan of the Cave Bear, and The Deep. Here's Tony holding artist Liz Moore's clay sculpture of the so-called starchild. The young painter and sculptress also worked uncredited in the art department, as you can see here, with Stuart Freeborn to create the ape-man masks. Kubrick was impressed with her and contracted her for the next film, A Clockwork Orange, for which she sculptured the shocking nude furniture. It's unclear whether Moore actually worked on Barry Lyndon, although Kubrick did ask her to. Tragically, Liz Moore died aged 32 in a car accident in 1976 while working on Richard Attenborough's A Bridge Too Far. This photo shows that there was concern about breath fogging up the two-way angled mirror in front of the camera used for the prehistoric scene. Stuart Freeborn, nicknamed the grandfather of modern makeup design. Stuart Freeborn was charged not only with creating the apes for the prehistoric introduction to the movie, he was also tasked with the aging effects necessary for lead character Keir Duella, Dave. Freeborn worked alongside his wife Kathy and his son Graham, and their work included 2001, Oliver Twist, Bridge on the River Kwai, The Omen, Superman, Top Secret, The Great Muppet Caper, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Chewbacca, the Ewoks and Yoda. Apparently Yoda's face was a combination of Albert Einstein and Stuart's. It's something once you've heard it, it's kind of difficult to unhear it when you look at him. Kubrick did an interview with Playboy magazine about the movie. Here are a couple of things that he said in that interview. The very nature of the visual experience in 2001 is to give the viewer an instantaneous visceral reaction that does not and should not require further amplification. Just speaking generally, however, I would say that there are elements in any good film that would increase the viewer's interest and appreciation on a second viewing. The momentum of a movie often prevents every stimulating detail or nuance from having a full impact the first time it's seen. The whole idea that a movie should be seen only once is an extension of our traditional conception of the film as an ephemeral entertainment rather than a visual work of art. We don't believe that we should hear a great piece of music only once, or see a painting once, or read a great book just once. But the film has until recent years been exempted from the category of art, a situation I'm glad is finally changing. The wheels on this buggy mounted with a camera are actually to allow it to remain still while the set is moving. This is the last movie Kubrick made while still wearing a suit. After that, Kubrick permanently dropped the formal wardrobe. From A Clockwork Orange 1971 onward, he was in a more casual, workmanlike kind of mode. Beard, open shirt, parka, corduroy jacket kind of attire. While studying in London, Michael Mann, who would become the director of Heat and Collateral eventually, had the opportunity to interview Kubrick 3 times. During a recent interview, Mann revealed that each time he met him, he was wearing the exact same outfit. Eventually, he plucked up the courage to ask him why he was wearing the same clothes. And Kubrick answered back, "No, I've got 30 of these pants and 30 of these jackets because I don't want to have to put any mental energy into thinking about what I'm going to wear tomorrow." This sounds like exactly the same reasoning that Steve Jobs had about what he wore daily. Pierre Boulat taking stills at dawn, assisted by Catherine Gear, to use for the prehistoric segments that start the film off. Namib Desert, January 1967. The Namib Desert is a coastal desert in southern Africa. This extraordinary land was used as a location also for Mad Max Fury Road 2015. Boulat was born in France in 1924. He graduated at the head of his class at the French National School of Photography and Film. Kubrick likely chose Boulat after seeing his work for Life magazine, photographing news, politics, fashion, people and features, and perhaps the book Images d'Égypte that he published when living in Cairo. He passed away in 1998. If cocoa boom trees served as an inspiration and a very distant background in 2001 A Space Odyssey. Concept art for the Dawn of Man sequence by English artist Roy Carnon. Note the monolith. Some of the art for 2001 that's uncredited appears to be in his style too. Studio prop of Discovery's dish antenna full size. This could have been an early concept for the Clavius Moonbase conference room. It would allow the viewer to see that there is research happening while executing the meeting scene, rather than two separate scenes being necessary. On the other hand, the background activity could be distracting if it wasn't out of focus. Could the device on the pole be a conference room camera, later replaced by the photographer's handheld? Or perhaps it's a projector. The handheld camera used by the photographer in this scene was designed by Nikon. Here's the prop. And here it is disassembled in its travel case. When asked by Playboy magazine how he was able to achieve such remarkable special effects for the movie, Kubrick replied, "I can't answer that question technically in the time that we have available, but I can say that it was necessary to conceive, design and engineer completely new techniques in order to produce the special effects. This took 18 months and $6.5 million out of a $10.5 million budget. I think an extraordinary amount of credit must go to Robert H. O'Brien, the president of MGM, who had sufficient faith to allow me to persevere at what must have at times appeared to be a task without end. But I felt it was necessary to make this film in such a way that every special effects shot in it would be completely convincing, something that had never before been accomplished in a motion picture." An early concept of the pyramid monolith. Arthur C. Clarke said of the pyramid that it was a shape which inspired all sorts of philosophical and scientific speculations, and the art department constructed models of various sizes, but somehow they never looked right, and there was always the danger that they would arouse wholly irrelevant associations with the pyramids. Another of Stuart Freeborn's concepts of what early man looked like 4 million years ago. Stuntman Bill Weston filming a spacewalk scene launching from a platform 30 feet above the concrete studio floor. Allegedly afterwards, Bill needed to recover from oxygen deprivation as a consequence of being suspended in the air with the mask on. Terry Duggan at Southampton Zoo, practicing teaching an animal to pounce on him and play fight in a way that looks convincing as if he's being attacked for the Dawn of Man sequence at the start of the movie. Towards the end of the movie, we see a room which has this ceiling as its floor. Kubrick with his daughter Vivian on set. She had cameos in a number of his movies, including Space Odyssey, Barry Lyndon. She shot behind-the-scenes documentary of The Shining at the age of 24, and she composed the score for Full Metal Jacket under the pseudonym of Abigail Mead. These eye-catching chairs weren't designed specifically for the film, but they were chosen by Kubrick and the team to create a futuristic scene. It does cross my mind though when you look at the scene and how everybody sat, and they just seem very awkward and uncomfortable. So maybe that's another reason they were chosen. The scene does come across as if it's meant to feel awkward and uncomfortable, with that tension there about trying to get to the truth, a bit of almost espionage going on. Tense and uncomfortable. These are called Dijin chairs, D-J-I-N-N, and they were designed by Olivier Morgue in 1965 while he was working for the French manufacturer Airborne International, and they epitomise the 60s futuristic kind of design. The name Dijin comes from an Islamic mythological spirit that can change shape from human to animal. The chairs have a wave-like low-slung silhouette, and they're made from tubular steel. They're covered in a foam padding and they're upholstered in a jersey fabric. They do look kind of a pink reddish colour. They're very sensitive to what kind of light and equipment they're photographed with, whether they appear a bit more red or a bit more pink, as you can see in these photos. 2 of these iconic chairs were sold by Chiswick Auctions in England in February 2020. The single chair sold for £440, including fees. That would be about $550 US. Here you can see the chairs and other props from 2001 stored by MGM. The Earthlight room was a luxury restaurant lounge on the space station that bore the branding of Howard Johnson's, which was a very popular American hotel and restaurant chain in the 60s. Howard Johnson's was synonymous with the middle class in America, dining and travel, so its presence in the orbit implied that space travel had become reasonably normal and accessible for the middle class. The name Earthlight suggests a view of Earth from the orbit, implying that the diners could enjoy a meal whilst looking at the planet. There is concept art that confirms this. Freeborn, Stuart's wife, she also worked on Superman and multiple Star Wars films alongside him. Man-apes Simon Davis and Richard Woods. Actor and mime Dan Richter poses in one of Freeborn's body shoots for a costume test. Richter also played the part of Moonwatcher, the lead ape man at the beginning of the movie. This briefcase computer was designed by Honeywell specifically for the film. Stanley Kubrick next to Arthur C. Clarke on set. Originally, they'd written a narration together for the movie. It's quite common to see that the movie was based on a novel by Arthur C. Clarke, but actually he wrote the novel after finishing the draft screenplay. And as Kubrick said himself, the novel's a totally different kind of experience, and there are a number of differences between the book and the movie. For example, the novel explains things much more explicitly than the film does. The novel came from a 130-page draft of the film at the very outset. But Arthur also took his impression of some of the rushes of the film whilst he was completing the novel. So the novel and the film originated from the same draft screenplay, but from there on they took fairly different paths. Kubrick next to one of Hal's ancestors. The Discovery spaceship, there are only 2 known extant models as far as I know. You can correct me in the comments. There is an urban legend that Stanley Kubrick ordered all the models and set pieces to be destroyed to avoid a sequel being made with them or them being recycled in other films and TV productions, as was quite frequently the case in that era. It's not true though. It was MGM who discarded the production items. At least some of the props did survive as well, and they can be seen in the Stanley Kubrick exhibition that's now been touring the world for almost 19 years. And there are also a few props out there which haven't been submitted to the exhibition. This is an abandoned Space Station 5 prop that was supposed to be destroyed. It was spotted about 20 miles away from Bournemouth MGM Studios, outside a tip in Stevenage. The tip was closed when the truck arrived to dump it and left it nearby. This information comes from Trevor Parsons, as told to Rod Monday at visualmemory.co.uk. Douglas Trumbull, working on the Moonbus. In a 2014 Hollywood Reporter interview, Douglas Trumbull said that he didn't feel that Kubrick really earned the 2001 visual effects Oscar, but that he did deserve Oscars for his talents as a director and as a writer, but not the special effects. It was his opinion that the special effects weren't designed by Kubrick so much as for people who worked on them, and there was some rule that didn't allow 4 people to be credited and win an award. And as he tells it, it was this technical issue that likely led to Kubrick being credited for the special effects. In a 1970 interview, Kubrick said that from the very outset of work on the film, we all discussed means of photographically depicting extraterrestrial creatures in a manner that would be as mind-boggling as the being itself. And it soon became apparent that you cannot imagine the unimaginable. All you can do is try to represent it in an artistic manner that will convey something of its quality. That's why we settled on the black monolith, which is, of course, in itself something of a Jungian archetype, and also a pretty fair example of minimal art. Arthur C. Clarke also commented on the use of the monolith in the movie. Our ultimate solution now seems to me the only possible one, but before arriving at it we spent months imagining strange worlds and cities and creatures in the hope of finding something that would produce the right shock of recognition. All this material was abandoned, but I would not say that any of it was unnecessary. It contained the alternatives that had to be eliminated, and therefore first had to be created. Just as a sculptor, it is said, chips down through the stone toward the figure concealed within. Later on in this video, you'll get to see some of the abandoned material that depicted aliens. Both 2001 and the James Bond film A View to a Kill used the same prop painting of a scene underneath a tree. Both films used the MGM prop department. The floor here is identical to the ceiling in the International Space Station. It looks like a hotel suite room. The rotating space station, of course, has a Hilton hotel. Maybe there's a connection to the theme of up and down and being disorientated. If you remember Floyd's conversation when he arrives at the space station, he asks, "Where are you all off, up or down?" And there are many instances in this movie of what's regarded at first as up and down changing. We also have the other great leap forward, the wheel, represented by the form of the International Space Station, which itself rotates in space. Kubrick stated in an interview that, I quote, "We had a ping-pong table, a piano and a shower in the Discovery, but in the end they didn't seem worth putting into the film. One tries to tighten up a film wherever possible." The control room of the Discovery set. There's a mirror incorporated into the set which allows people to be filmed as if they're standing at a right angle to the people seated. It's interesting to note that Kubrick appears to have selected the same pale off-green beige that you can see on the walls here in the hotel room, or supposed hotel room, in the scenes related to death or deadly sickness in Eyes Wide Shut, the morgue wall tiles, the death of Marion Nathanson's father, the entrance hall of Domino's, the HIV positive prostitute. If you want to find out more about Eyes Wide Shut, please check out my full movie commentary. Filming animated elements for the spaceship computer screens is very clever because it really does look like computer graphics, and of course it's all analog. Douglas Trumbull built these items by soldering wires together. In November 2025, on The Colbert Show, Oscar winner Anthony Hopkins revealed that Hal influenced his portrayal of Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs and the sequels. When he was asked why Hal, he replied, and I quote, "Because he's a machine. It's the mechanical sound of his voice. Hannibal is inhuman, a machine, a killer machine." And once you know that, when you listen to Hannibal in the movie, it resonates immediately. In this photo, next to Stanley Kubrick, is Jeffrey Unsworth. He is the Oscar-winning cinematographer of many films, including 2001 A Space Odyssey, Superman 1, Superman 2, Cabaret, Tess, Murder on the Orient Express, and Beckett. Unsworth won a BAFTA for his camera work on 2001 A Space Odyssey. Clarke wrote the following about the monolith. The famous monolith, which has caused so much controversy and bafflement, was in itself the end product of a considerable evolution. In the beginning, the alien artifact had been a black tetrahedron, the simplest and most fundamental of all regular solids, formed of 4 equal triangles. The camera prop that we see the scientist use in this scene is a real underwater camera housing called Hugifot Hasselblad 500C. It's a Swedish brand, and very few of these casings were manufactured. Hasselblad worked closely with NASA to supply them with cameras that were used on many different missions. These included Apollo 11 in 1969, when photos were taken on the moon with a Hasselblad camera. Their cameras were also used to photograph the first spacewalk. Note the shape of the coffee dispensers has the same sarcophagus coffin shape as the hibernation pods. The International Space Station 5 hostess uniform. An early design of the Prehumans by Stuart Freeborn. Freeborn's original conception for the Dawn of Man sequence in 2001 was based on early Neverlandal Man. Doug Trumbull testing the viability of clay as a material to build the lunar landscape. For the monolith, Kubrick also considered using a transparent cube. He had a 3-ton cube of lucite cast, the largest ever made. Lucite is a high-quality, durable acrylic resin. MGM Borehamwood Studios, March 1966. Stanley Kubrick as his command post besides the centrifuge set, Jeffrey Unsworth, Pamela Carlton, John Alcott and Gary Lockwood. Concept art painted for the production by special effects artist Bruce Logan. The BBC is the British Broadcasting Corporation, the world's oldest national broadcaster owned by the British government. It's quite a curious choice, given that you're compelled to pay an annual licence fee on penalty of fines or prison if you own a television, even if you don't actually watch any of their channels. Douglas Trumbull, with a machine devised to create shots of the planet Jupiter. Exposures were acquired in a completely darkened room, in which only the projected slits of the painted artwork were visible to the camera. This Jupiter machine was also used in the film for the famous Stargate sequence. Mixed media artist and sculptor Joy Cuff made several plaster tabletop models of the moon and its complex surface, used for shots of the film of the moon bus travelling over the surface of the moon, and the views from the spacecraft windows. The tabletop models measured 3 by 6 feet within one 10-foot square area and an interacting long set for a tracking shot of approximately 25 feet. Joy would work from thumbnail sketches, some created by her, with some simple drawings drawn by Stanley Kubrick. Mere diagrams to show surface planes and crater edges, but all to be very carefully composed on set. Joy worked with matte artist Bob Cuff and cameraman John McKay until they left to form a company together. She then worked alone until Roger Dickin arrived. A drawing of the space station docking area by concept artist Roy Kamen. He would later work on Superman, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Bruce Logan shooting animation for 2001. Robert McCall with one of the paintings which Kubrick used for the iconic posters of 2001. He passed away in 2010, but his website is still running, called mccallstudios.com, and it shows all his artwork to promote 2001. This is one of the paintings used to depict Earth in the film. It's probably one of the many that were painted by Italian artist Gino Pellegrini. He started working in the movie business as a sketch designer, set painter, and so on movies such as West Side Story, The Birds, Hello Dolly, and Mary Poppins. In an interview about 2001, he stated, I quote, "I had to paint over and over the clouds for the Earth model as seen from the space station. It was a 4-feet model. For every shot, Kubrick wanted the look to be different, as if the clouds were actually moving over the Earth." Another example of Kubrick's perfectionism from Gino, I quote, "Designers couldn't work fast enough. Kubrick was always convinced his crew were spending most of the time drinking tea and chatting, and seriously considered the idea of installing a CCTV monitoring system in order to control them, until the most informed workers advised him against that move, which would have caused an instant strike." You can read the full interview at 2001italia.it. Kubrick holding a baby doll while he was looking for solutions for the depiction of the starchild. Kubrick was inspired to have a sculpture resembling a fetus made by Lennart Nilsson's pioneering photographs in Life magazine in 1965 that showed for the first time the development of a uterus in the womb. Brian Johnson stated in a Cinefax magazine interview, Stanley did not want him to look like a normal human child, but to have a more evolved look with a slightly bigger head. In the beginning, it had to be a more complex puppet with arms and fingers that could move, but then Stanley had the idea of surrounding it with a cocoon of light, and finally decided that all he needed were eyes that could move, so I built glass eyes and a small mechanism using drives and bearings, with some motors that made them move sideways and slightly up and down. Douglas Trumbull also stated in a Cinefex interview about the starchild scene, Stanley shot it through about 15 layers of a special gauze. This particular gauze, actually very rare lady stockings from pre-war Europe, created a beautiful softening of the light without making it unsharp. If you use a fog filter, it makes the image unsharp because it's actually a piece of glass with diffusion on it. But with gauze, part of the camera lens is seeing right through it without interruption, so it tends to scatter the light without really stopping it from being sharp. The starchild prop was believed to be lost, but it was found after Kubrick's death in his massive archives. It now features in the Travelling Stanley Kubrick exhibition. The Whirlpool branding is difficult to make out in the movie, but the Aries stewardess gets meals from an RCA Whirlpool Zero Gravity food preparation unit. Try saying that 3 times fast after a few beers. In his Playboy interview about 2001, Kubrick also said, "I will say that the God concept is at the heart of 2001, but not any traditional anthropomorphic image of God. I don't believe in any of Earth's monotheistic religions, but I do believe that one can construct an intriguing scientific definition of God once you accept the fact that there are approximately 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone, that each star is a life-giving sun, and that there are approximately 100 billion galaxies in just the visible universe. Given a planet in a stable orbit, not too hot and not too cold, and given a few billion years of chance chemical reactions created by the interaction of a sun's energy on the planet's chemicals, it's fairly certain that life in one form or another will eventually emerge. It's reasonable to assume that there must be in fact countless billions of such planets where biological life has arisen, and the odds of some proportion of such life developing intelligence are high. Now, the Sun is by no means an old star, and its planets are mere children in cosmic age, so it seems like there are billions of planets in the universe, not only where intelligent life is on a lower scale than man, but other billions where it is approximately equal. and others still where it is hundreds of thousands of millions of years in advance of us. When you think of the giant technological strides that man has made in a few millennia, less than a microsecond in the chronology of the universe, can you imagine the evolutionary development that much older life forms have taken? They may have progressed from biological species, which are fragile shells for the mind at best, into immortal machine entities, and then over innumerable eons they could emerge from the chrysalis of matter transformed into beings of pure energy and spirit. Their potentialities would be limitless, and their intelligence ungraspable by humans. This wide-angle photo taken by Kubrick features various members of the art department: John Graysmark, John Fenner, Tony Redding and Alan Tompkins, who were all draftsmen for the feature film. So what would happen if all your food was just mush and liquid? Well, we already know that because studies of our ancestors who ate much more substantial food show that they had straight teeth. And our teeth are very poorly aligned because we don't eat such coarse food. So we'd definitely have dental problems. Secondly, it'd be boring. No crunchy food, no textures. This wooden model was constructed during the concept stage of the production and provided a basis for miniature models and the full-size craft used during the shoot. It has hand-drawn pencil markings indicating the positioning of lights and additional details, some of which are seen in the final iteration. This concept model can be seen on the table during the production still showing the art department. In the foreground, from left to right, we have Stanley Kubrick, George Mueller, who was the senior manager at NASA on the Apollo moon landing program, Arthur C. Clarke, and scientific advisor Frederick Ordway in the cricket top. Far right is Deke Slayton, head of the American Astronaut Office. Pen, the iconic transition from bone weapon thrown in the air to spacecraft travelling through space to pen floating, each a huge leap for mankind, representing different milestones in human development. The floating pen effect was done by affixing a pen to a transparent sheet of glass or perspex, and the trick was to avoid any light reflection on the panel. Some more photos featuring Frederick Ordway, top official at NASA, who became Chief Technical Consultant and Scientific Advisor for 2001. For almost 2 years, he was one of Kubrick's most essential advisors. He even moved his family to England for the production. There's an amusing anecdote by Michael Hare, an American writer and war correspondent who knew Kubrick very well, and he was trying to encourage Michael to use computers. He wrote that this was 1983, pre-laptop. There were 5 computers in Kubrick's room, all running, and Kubrick had moved from station to station to feed and manipulate data while we talked. He said, "Michael, listen to me. It's only a very limited, arbitrary and simple series of commands that you just don't know yet. I mean, how hard can it be? The police use them." He also said of Kubrick, he was a director who loved long takes and long scenes, who was, in Anthony Lane's opinion, alarmingly insolent towards the demands of chronology, which wasn't meant as a compliment, but should be, and perhaps referred to the leap across 4 million years in a single jump cut in 2001. Canadian actress Chella Matheson played the role of receptionist on board the space station. These photos come from Tom Spina Designs in New York. They were trusted to restore one of the ape costumes from Space Odyssey. Here you can see that the foam latex on the hands had quite a bit of wear. There was also a lot of wear on the foot from the original costume, and the other foot was missing, so they had to create a replica. This particular costume is for a female example of the man-apes. In fact, the costume had a functional nursing mechanism, so the actor could give milk to a live chimp baby, adding another layer of realism to the movie. Stanley Kubrick Playboy interview on 2001. Why should a vastly superior race bother to harm or destroy us? If an intelligent ant suddenly traced a message in the sand at my feet reading, "I'm sentient, let's talk things over," I doubt very much that I would rush to grind him under my heel. Even if they weren't super intelligent though, but merely more advanced than mankind, I would tend to lean more towards the benevolence or at least indifference theory. Since it's most unlikely that we would be visited from within our own solar system, any society capable of traversing light years of space would have to have an extremely high degree of control over matter and energy. Therefore, what possible motivation for hostility would they have? To steal our gold or oil or coal? It's hard to think of any nasty intention that would justify the long and arduous journey from another star. Who could have predicted in 1900 what life in 1968 would be like? Technology is, in many ways, more predictable than human behaviour. Politics and world affairs change so quickly that it's difficult to predict the future of social institutions for even 10 years with a modicum of accuracy. By 2001, we could be living in a Gandhi-esque paradise where all men are brothers, or in a neo-fascist dictatorship, or be muddling along about the way we are today. As technology evolves, however, there's little doubt that the whole concept of leisure will be both quantitatively and qualitatively improved. Quite a number of alien concepts were made for the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey, although none of them were used, and it was decided only to hint indirectly at alien life rather than show it. Another idea was to use black dots which were just stamped out of a black piece of paper. They got the largest paper hole puncher they could and stamped out perfect rounds of black paper. These were then glued all over white clothing, from head to toe. They were placed evenly all over the actor. The artist was then put in front of a white background with the same size black dots all over it. Stood still, they would disappear into the background just like a predator kind of effect. But when they moved, you could make out a shape. Dan Richter, who played Moonwatcher, the leader of the Ape Man pack, actually talked about this experiment in his book, Moonwatcher's Memoirs. In an entry of his diary dated September the 5th, 1967, he recalled Kubrick asking him to stay longer after finishing the ape scenes and shooting some footage using the polka dot suit. Elongated, humanoid aliens, not unlike those we can see in the film AI. At the bottom of this painting, some small insect-like aliens can be seen. They were later described by Arthur Clarke in a script draft. Some of the alien concepts were made from light or electronic signals. Others, physical ones, seem to be inspired by demons or gargoyles. Stanley's daughter, Katharina Kubrick, wrote that "My mother, Christiane, also spent time making aliens out of clay in her studio at Abbots Mead. They were cast in rubber and painted in weird colours, and I'm guessing they could have been manipulated a la Muppets. Of course, they were never used and ended up dotted around the garden. Too funny to see people react to these rather unusual garden gnomes." The Russian scientist in the green dress is played by Christina Marr. Model and actress Edwina Carroll, who you may have also seen in Blue Murder at St. Trinian's and Carry On Up the Jungle. When interviewed in 2022, she reflected that "My career highlight has to be working on 2001. Having the opportunity to work with such a well-respected director like Kubrick was just amazing. All the cast and crew were pretty fearful of getting anything wrong as they wanted to impress. I remember having to walk in the rain from my dressing room to the set, which was quite a distance. When Stanley found out about this, he immediately arranged a portable dressing room to be put near to the set so I wouldn't get cold or wet, and could quickly and comfortably get to where I needed to be. He was so kind and so considerate, as well as being a true genius." Art director Harry Lange's design for the spacesuit. Actress Penny Brams, who plays a stewardess on board the lunar shuttle Ares, was only 15 years old when shooting 2001 in 1966. In this deleted scene, Floyd calls Macy's and buys his daughter the promised Bush baby. American Express allegedly submitted a design for a smart ring for the film, but Kubrick decided not to use it. Instead, they supplied this credit card. It's not very clear watching the film, but Dr. Floyd pays for his space station call to Earth with an American Express credit card that he inserts into a unit below the two keypads. It's interesting to note 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, then a black line or a gap in the unit. I wonder what the reason is for those. The costumes for 2001 were designed by Hardy Ames, born in 1909 in London. Ames will always be remembered for dressing Queen Elizabeth II. He died March 2003, aged 93. Ames's business grew to be worth more than £200 million. When asked which collection was his favourite, he always replied, "The next one." This is a pair of unused United States Astronautics Agency stickers from the film. The USAA logo appeared on many spacesuits and equipment used for the Discovery mission. One sticker is 6 cm and the other is 1.2 cm. Special effects supervisor Con Pedersen working on a preliminary design sketch for the Discovery spacecraft. William Sylvester and Wally Vivers during production. A very happy Arthur C. Clarke here posing outside the cinema. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed my insights into the movie. I'd like to invite you to check out my audio commentary to the Stanley Kubrick film Eyes Wide Shut, and behind the scenes and deleted scenes commentary to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Also a world exclusive into Oliver Stone's early draft screenplay of the classic Scarface. For those videos, please check the links below this video or this channel's movie related playlist.